Hey, welcome to the Ron Johnson Discipleship Podcast.
We are excited you're here, and if your New Year's resolution was to keep watching this podcast, you're doing a great job. All right, we're 3 weeks in, and you guys are still with us, and I'm joking, obviously, but we're really excited about helping you get traction on your life and dreaming with the Lord, which is what we're talking about today. But before we get into that, the last couple of weeks we've given some practical things. I just wanted to review and add a little great quote here. Have you ever read much of Andy Andrews?
I heard about him.
Yeah,
I don't read much.
Any of you that are looking for just a great, practical, fun, creative book to read, I would recommend anything from Andy Andrews. But let me give you a little snippet. This is from his book called The Traveler's Gift, and I'm reading this just by way of review. Last week we talked about how important our beliefs are in maintaining transformation and change and accomplishing goals in our life. If you don't change what's on the inside, you're never going to see a different set of circumstances on the outside. But this is, again, Andy Andrews' book called The Traveler's Gift. He says, "The buck stops here. I accept responsibility for my past. I'm responsible for my success. I am where I am today, mentally, physically, spiritually, emotionally, and financially, because of the decisions I have made. My decisions have always been governed by my thinking. Therefore, I am where I am today, mentally, physically, spiritually, emotionally, and financially, because of how I think. Mm-hmm. Today, I will begin the process of changing where I am, mentally, physically, spiritually, emotionally, and financially, by changing the way I think." Wow, that quote has so much emphasis on ownership and personal responsibility. It almost sounds foreign in our culture today. We're victimhood and blame shifting, and I would be different except this happened or that happened.
Entitlement. I deserve this.
Yeah, and I mean, he just comes right out and says, I am responsible, and basically the quality of my life goes back directly, at least in large part, to what I choose to believe.
Is he like a comedian? He's kind of like a...
he's very funny.
Yeah.
But he's not a comedian. He's really an inspirational, kind of motivational speaker. But his story is phenomenal because he spent time living under a pier in like Gulf Shores, Alabama, which is where was always our vacation spot. But he was at such a low point in his life personally of brokenness that he had no home, no money, no nothing, no family, and living under a pier, homeless.
Sure.
And all of a sudden, he had just an amazing encounter with the Lord and an encounter with him, his own self-awareness, and he just started taking ownership for his life. And now he's a best-selling author. I don't know how many million books he's sold. He travels the world, and I think what gives him credibility, and we see that at Living Stones. What gives a person credibility is like when Chris stood up Sunday and said, hey, I was a heroin addict, and now he's leading worship, and he's completely set free. Mm-hmm. Here's a guy that literally took no responsibility for any of those things and was living under a pier, and now he's a best-selling author.
I just thought he had to overcome all kind of odds because his parents gave him that name. Think about it, Andy Andrews.
And you think you had a bad...
I'm going to name my son. It's like your first name's Johnson.
Well, I have a Jonathan Johnson.
Yeah, so but that's not as bad.
Yeah, all right. So
I'm sorry. That's the only thing I think about when I saw his name. It's like, what was his parent thinking? We're going to give him a nickname so he's not that obvious. Sorry.
All right, that was a side issue.
Unrehearsed.
For any parents out there, just think about it, all right? Just think about it.
Think about it. Think about your first name for your kid and your last name.
But Andrew is a good name.
Yes, it is a great name.
As
long as your last name is not also Andrew.
I went to school with a girl, I hope she's not watching this podcast, but her name was Amy.
Last name Amy?
Last name was Amy. I think she married an Amy, which makes it all the more crazy.
Wow. See, those are the, you normally want, name is not a huge consideration who you marry. In this case, I would be like, my daughter going to marry a...
Yeah, that would lead to a lot of awkward situations.
Anyways.
So, we offer it all on this podcast. Yeah, I mean, we're just not narrowing the kind of help we provide.
Yes.
Back to our power of belief. We want to encourage people work on what you believe about yourself. And again, our scripture, we're talking about biblical worldview here. Who you are should flow out of who God says you are. And God is always about taking ownership, and we're never a defeatist, victim, entitlement. The kingdom of God is none of those things. So the first step to change is just you owning it, and then beginning to change what you think about yourself. So if you didn't catch all of that, that was last week's podcast. But we're going to talk today about owning your dream. And what I think is really cool about being made in the image and likeness of God is the fact that even as God is the ultimate dreamer, creator, visionary, he spoke all of this into creation. He designed us in great detail. What I love about that is we have the ability as human beings to create with God, and in a sense to get a God-given dream and to dream along and create a future that's different. It's never been there, never happened. We can imagine, and I think again, what's very important for maybe our listeners today is, many people are stuck in the past with memories, and because they're stuck with painful memories, they're not able to look into the future and actually dream. The ability to imagine is a gift from God, and I think we've talked about this before. Like worry and things like that are really a perversion of an incredible gift. God wants us to have the freedom to see farther, to look farther, dream farther, imagine things that are not currently here. And to me, that's an amazing privilege that we have. And I think every person has to pause and say, how's my dreamer working? I think we go through life and it's hard sometimes, and we get caught in the mundane, or we get caught in the moment, or we get caught in the child that's sick, like you ran into last night, and it kind of throws a monkey wrench into our whole world. And sometimes dreaming almost seems like it's a luxury, but really dreaming is a necessity. I have found that people who don't dream just get lost in the mundane aspects of life.
Yeah.
And I don't know about you, but when I don't have a dream that's a compelling dream and a vision in my life, it's almost like not worth getting out of bed in the morning. Like, people get up, they eat breakfast, they go to work, they deal with all the problems, they come home, they deal with all the marriage problems, kid problems, life problems, bill problems, go to sleep, and they do it all over again. That is a dreary existence, but many people are simply stuck going through the motions of life.
Yeah, sometimes when I work with leaders or business leaders or church leaders, whatever, and sometimes people are really stuck in a rut, or they're really feeling some burnout. I ask a simple question. I said, tell me 3 things you're looking forward to. I'm not talking about like I'm looking forward to when I become a gazillionaire, or I'm looking forward when my company,
So kind of on the immediate horizon.
Just basic. Like, what are you looking for? Yeah, immediate. Like, I'm looking forward to a date night with my wife on Wednesday. Yeah. I'm looking forward to sleeping in on Saturday. Whatever. It's just something basic. And often when people say, I got really nothing to looking forward to. Yeah. I mean, that to me is an indicator of some deeper things in the heart, because like you said, you're stuck in the mundane. You're going from one thing to another. Your ability to, you are looking like right at the next step. We got to look at the next step, but every once in a while we got to look up a little bit, right?
Yeah. Well, I've even thought we've both been married for a season. We're not newlyweds. I think even in marriage, if you're not careful, you just fall into ruts, and
especially kids.
Hey, honey, let's dream together again. What do we sense God's doing in our lives at this season? What are our desires? What would you like to do? Hey, what do we want to do on vacation this next summer with our kids? That dream keeps you excited and growing.
And that is really important. Like my wife and I, because we have young kids and we just, whatever, we haven't taken a real vacation and we haven't seen our family in a couple of years, just the travel situations. And we find ourselves stuck in a rut and feeling this almost like a little bit trapped of not being able to freedom to really relax. And we have to really fight hard to say, no, we are going to plan for something. We are going to have resources to figure out how to do that. And sometimes you really have to fight for it, not because you're lazy or whatever, simply because you're trying to be responsible. But that has its own pitfalls, right? You still have to drink in the midst of your stewardship of your restriction based on your responsibility to still drink.
I think what you said was so good. You're going to have the challenges that happen in life, but the problem is if you don't have a dream that you're, kind of the light at the end of the tunnel that you're really excited about, it seems like you're just living from one pitfall to the next, one challenge to the next, and it can become very demoralizing. So we're wanting to make your heart awaken again, and some of that comes from getting alone with the Lord. And we're going to give you some practical things, but we're really not even just talking about dream like for a vacation. That's nice. We do need to dream about fun times away with our family or whatever. But how about this? How about what is the supernatural, God-inspired vision that He's put in your heart? You know, one of the greatest pastors of all time in terms of just sheer scope of his ministry was Dr. Paul Youngie Cho, who pastored the largest church in the world in South Korea. I've been to that church, famous for their intercessory prayer and so forth. But he was somebody who would access through prayer the presence of the Lord, and really was focused on, Lord, what is your dream for your church? And he would sit in the Lord's presence until that was clear. And he said this. He said, when vision comes, you're changed. You speak and act differently, and you lead differently. Vision received from the Lord makes you a new person. And thankfully, we don't need to make the vision. I love this. The vision makes us. Isn't that good? When you get a God ordained or God inspired vision, you don't have to make it happen. Yeah. It makes you happen. In other words, you are carried along with the hand of God on your life, and the blessing and the favor of God as you're pursuing that particular assignment that God's put in your life. And I don't know about you, but for me, the thing that's always kept my life fresh, my marriage fresh, my family fresh, everything, is the fact that I have a clear sense of my calling. Mm-hmm. And it's gotten foggy at different times. You know, sometimes you go through hard times, painful times, tiring times. Sometimes the vision's like bright and clear, and sometimes I'm like, where did I put that vision? You know, I can't find it. But it's been that vision that has shaped who I am.
Yeah, I think the vision also keeps us growing. Here's the thing: is we get stuck in our rut. We get stuck in comfort. We get stuck in our routines. Not even intentional. You get into a routine, you know. But because the vision is external from us, it's outside of our own understanding. It's an outside source. It has the ability to push us and challenge us and shape us and push us to areas that we would never go on our own. Like, I'm not familiar with that. I'm not comfortable with that. I'm not going to attempt that. But the vision is what drives us to that. Vision is what drives people to do mission work in places they don't know the language, they don't know the people. But the vision is what drives them. So they have to adapt. They have to learn. Vision is what drives others to start new businesses that they never, attempted to or wanted to. And I think that's so refreshing about the external source that comes in and says, I'm going to challenge whatever you have, the status quo, to bring you into new places. Look at the life of Moses, look at Abraham, right? Oh, it's all driven by mission or vision.
So here's a good question to think about. If we could ask you, how important is it for you to maximize the remaining days of your life? That kind of brings things into focus. You know, we're all at different seasons. Some of you may be young listeners or viewers. Some of you might be my age. Some might be older. It seems like, if I give an example, we just had a very dear a man of God at our church who everybody saw last Sunday doing what he does and faithfully serving. And then on Monday, he unexpectedly went home to be with the Lord. Wow, it was such a shocker that it made so many people go, wow, I just talked to him yesterday. And I think it's moments like that cause us to go, you know what, our lives should not be taken for granted. Yeah. Every day is precious. Every relationship is precious. Yeah. We don't usually live that way. But I think there's moments like that when we get a glimpse and they cause us to go, wow, I need to examine the time that I have left. And I love this question again. How important is it to maximize the remaining days of your life? It's interesting when you look in the Bible. A negative example of this is Satan. In Revelations chapter 12, it basically says, because Satan knows that his days are limited, he is releasing, he's living his vision of destruction and pain and misery and suffering. He is maximizing and being very intentional and aggressive. In fact, it says he's acting with great fury, and that fury intensifies as he knows his days get shorter and shorter. Look on the positive side of that. You mentioned, I believe it was Moses and David, a couple great examples. This is what David said in Psalm 39, verse 4. O Lord, make me know the end and what is the measure of my days, and let me know how fleeting I am. I think that kind of captures how we felt this past week with the passing of a dear friend. Wow, life is short. Life flies by. David saying, help me be aware of this so I can maximize my life. And you talked about Moses. What a great example for Moses. This is Psalm chapter 90, verse 12 and 17. Moses prays, so teach us to number our days that we may gain a heart of wisdom. And then he says, and let the beauty of the Lord our God be upon us and establish the work of our hands. Yes, establish the work of our hands. There's two parts of that verse I'd like to talk about this morning. The first one is the numbering of our days. And this is something I know you major on. You work with mentoring business leaders. I think one of your skill sets is helping people move from point A to point B and really accomplish things. And you can't do any of that until, numbering of days means, I only have so many. And so how am I going to use each one strategically to get from point A to point B, which is the fulfillment, of the vision that God has for me. So numbering of the days is important. But the second part here is important too, establishing the work of our hands, which to me speaks of legacy. I want to know that sometimes people are very busy, but they're not productive. Are we busy with things that matter? Are we busy with things that are leaving legacies, or are we just busy? And sometimes I think just being busy is a cover-up for a man or woman who doesn't really have a clear vision.
No, that's a great point. I've talked to, just from a business standpoint, I've talked to guys who work their butt off. And I know this is not a great example, but this is a example. I'll ask, I know you work really hard, a lot of hours, but did you make money? I'm not sure. Because you can work really hard and you don't know your numbers you don't know if you're profitable. Okay, that's a physical example.
Yeah, you work for a purpose, and that purpose, especially if you own a business, is profit. And profit is godly. There's nothing wrong with it. In fact, if you're spending all this time working and you make no money, you're not going to be in business very long.
Because you're not clear of the parameters, and because it's not like you're not working hard, but you might accept a job that the profit margin is too low, or you made some mistakes, so you had to backtrack. Whatever reason is we lose vision, we lose sight of those clear marks of what is profitability.
Right.
So end of the day, you work really hard, you have great cash flow, but end of the year when you do your taxes, or beginning of the year when you do the taxes, you realize, I actually did not make any money this year. That's not a good feeling to have, right?
At that point, you better go back to the drawing board and begin to ask these questions.
Okay, so that's like the physical manifestation. Let's look at the spiritual manifestation. Like we could be very busy, doing a lot of activity. We can even rally a lot of people, right? But at the end of the day, what is the fruit that God requires of us, right?
And that vision helps you define reality.
Yeah.
Because the vision helps you sort out the important from the less important. It's not that things aren't important, it's just that things are less important. And that's, I think, where eternity comes in and where a biblical worldview comes in. It helps clear the fog. In light of eternity, like how important are my kids and their relationship with the Lord? It's like really important. In light of eternity, how important is my marriage? In light of eternity, how important is how I'm spending my time? When people matter and souls matter, and eternity is getting closer. The Bible talks about your redemption draweth nigh. To use the old King James. In other words, we're getting closer and closer. Christ's return is nearer than it ever has been. These are realities, kind of pillars that have always been a part of a believer's life that help us sort out the important from the lesser important.
Yeah, and I think this is where the personal assignment from God, the intimate relationship walk, is so important, because everyone's, there's some general assignments, a Great Commission. Everyone's responsible for that. Bear fruit, absolutely. But there's also personal assignments that God's given every single person.
Right. And
that can't be replaceable, because your personal assignment is going to be different from mine, different from Matt's. But the idea is you're accountable for your own personal assignment, right? So you got to know the Lord, you got to know your mission, or you got to know your vision that God's given you, so you can make sure that you're profitable in that mission.
Yeah, important question. And even relationally. My heart, as our church is growing, I love everybody. I generally do. I would love to know everybody's story. I try to go around and hug and connect with as many people as I can before, after, in between, during service. We were here Sunday till about 3:00 doing that. But we love it. But I have to constantly ask the question, since I can't have that kind of relationship with everyone, who are the people who I should be investing, my life in? Those are hard questions, but important questions. And obviously, number one, Jesus. Number two, your wife, and if you're married, and kids, your family. And then number three is when we spread out to our realm of friends, work relationships, just social friendships, whatever it is. But trying to keep those things in order so nothing's suffering, that's a challenge. Now, here's a great, I love the strength you have of saying, okay, let's get practical. And you do that on a regular basis with leaders. Here's one of those practical transitions, all right, when it comes to dreams. This is a great question. If you're watching, just write this question down and spend some time meditating on this before the month ends. Okay, here's the question. One of my dreams is to fill in the blank. It seems so basic, but many people would struggle with just saying one of my dreams is and filling in the blank. So start getting alone where you can clear your head and you be quiet and get with the Lord and ask yourself that question. This is what I found is great when you're sitting there with an open mind before the Lord. I believe it was Bob Beal who taught this. It only takes 2 minutes. Put the timer on 2 minutes. And in 2 minutes, that's all the time you're given, begin to write just what immediately comes into your heart. And it's amazing the clarity that will come in 120 seconds. It does not have to be hours. Just take the time, quiet place, quiet your heart, ask the question, and begin writing. Now, another great assignment, and I've done this before with a group of leaders, is you get a blank sheet of paper, come up with 4 columns. The first column is accomplish, what things to accomplish. Second column, what you want to become. This is more personal transformation. Third column, what you want to do. Fourth column, what you want to have in terms of possessions or whatever. So accomplishments, what you want to become, what you want to do, and what you want to have over, say, the next 10 years. And then again, set a time and basically say go and just start writing. It was amazing to me when I first did this assignment how my dream was, for lack of a better word, constipated. I had certain things that came to my mind instantly. I had certain big things, like I want my life to glorify God. Well, that's great, but what does that look like? And then when it came to specific things, I found that in certain areas of my life, I really had very undeveloped dreams. In other areas of my life, I had very narrow dreams. And overall, I was pretty stuck and I found that I wasn't much of a dreamer. And I needed to ask the Lord to help free me up to see more clearly and to be able to get my dreamer dreaming again. Because as we said, there's dire consequences when you have lost the ability to dream. Psalm 20, verse 4, this is a great prayer. May He, the Lord, grant you the desires of your heart, and may He fulfill all your plans. So desires are important, and plans are important. And maybe you could take us into the remaining part of this podcast, because I want us to talk about owning the dream. And some practical aspects. Once you get that dream and you kind of get the flow again, then how do we own it?
Yeah, I think it ties back to the beginning of our podcast, which is, at the end of the day, a lot of times we feel like these dreams, we call them dreams, okay? Even the word dream, like when you think about dream, you think about something that's happening when you're sleeping, right? It's like a pipe dream, right?
Mystical, ethereal.
It's like almost like if you have the perfect luck and the perfect, coincidence and the perfect chess piece fall in the right places, that you might get to it. And that's what we think about dreams. But that's actually not how successful and accomplished people think about dreams. They don't really call it a dream, they call it a plan. They plan to happen because they understand the power of ownership and the power of planning and the power of execution, and they strategize to accomplish. That's the difference. I look at somebody like an Elon Musk or somebody who's very accomplished, and I'm like, okay, is he that much more talented than your normal, guys like myself or whoever? Is it really just about talent, or like maybe he was born, well, I don't know his backstory, whatever. But then as I learn about leaders and observe leaders, I recognize the distinguishing factor. Talent does have a factor. Absolutely. I mean, I can play basketball as hard as I want. I would never be able to be as good as LeBron James or Michael Jordan. Talent does matter. So I'm not saying talent doesn't matter. But what matters so much more than talent is your mindset. And I truly, truly believe that. And I used to hear these inspirational statements. I'm like, whatever. In the day, it's the talent. No, after years and years of working with leaders, studying leader, reading books, reading leadership books, of test studies, of business studies, I realized it really isn't about talent. It's about your mentality to say, do I really believe my decision can lead me to this dream? Because if at the end of the day you don't believe your decisions can lead to the dream, it's a nice idea.
Right.
When the rubber meets the road, when things get busy, when things get tough, you're going to abandon it because you still think it's up to chance. I have no control over that. But the truly successful, accomplished people recognize, you know what? I have what it takes. I have been given the stewardship to be able to accomplish that. I truly believe that. Therefore, I'm going to sacrifice. I'm going to sacrifice leisure. I'm going to sacrifice money. I'm going to sacrifice resource to work towards it because going back to our original statement by Andy Andrews, right? I'm in ownership of that. I can accomplish that. And that is a huge mental factor.
Yeah.
You know?
We've all been in settings where people are brainstorming, or there's always the person with the great idea, you know. Somebody should do that. And the statement "somebody should" literally means nobody will. Because somebody should, you haven't defined the somebody yet, and we haven't really talked about what the should is and what it looks like, and then therefore it means that great idea just kind of went up into outer space because there's no ownership.
Yeah, and there is a moderation to that too. I mean, your dream also needs to fit your skill set, your talent level, and that's where experience comes in. That's why when people are younger, they have these dreams, and I look at them like that. You know, you need to be tempered a little bit. But as we get older, you realize, man, now you have some very realistic. When I say realistic, I don't mean they're not lofty. They're lofty, but they're catered to your taste, to your passion, to your talent. And they become very, very coherent dreams. But then you got to break those dreams down. Here's the key. You got to break those dreams down into practical, measurable, accountable steps. And that is like the part that nobody likes to talk about, right?
Ouch.
So there is the difference between strategy and tactical steps.
Right.
And people get those two things confused, right? If it's a strategy, if you use sports analogy for all those people who don't watch, I'm sorry. But you know, when you go and play a team for the championship, there's an overall strategy. Like overall strategy is limit on turnovers, a game plan. But then within like football, within each play, you have a tactical play. This is our defensive play. We're going to go for the blitz or we're going to go for the Hail Mary, whatever. Those are the tactical play. Strategy itself is not enough. You still got to call the plays in the middle of the plays, right? You can't just like, we have a game plan. Our goal is to keep our turnovers down.
Yeah.
Go. We're not going to call any plays. That's not going to work, right? We're not going to look at the clock.
But if you don't run any plays, you can't have any turnovers.
Right.
It's not a very realistic strategy.
But that's ridiculous from a sports standpoint. But a lot of times with dreams, what we do is we have this big strategy session.
So give us. You're working with leaders all the time. Give us a real life example.
Okay, so I want to start a business. Say that. I want to have this great talent.
That sounds so sexy, by the way, because when someone says, I want to run my own business, all they're thinking of is dollar sign. They think if I run my own business, I can call my own shots, I can do my own thing, and I'll be a gazillionaire. But it doesn't quite work out that way.
Well, I just saw a video yesterday with Pastor Linstone, I share with some business guys that basically he's like, if you want to go into business for economic reasons, you're in there for the wrong reason. If you are going to be a leader, okay, you are always going to be on the opposite side of the economics. Because you are always going to give more than you receive, period. I mean, it might not just be money, it's time, energy, and whatever. So if you are not there for a responsibility, you're there for economics, don't be a leader. And I love that from a high level. Pastor Lindsay only actually said that. And I was just like, wow, this is such a good reminder for young leaders. Say, hey, before you do that, the example I gave is, hey, nobody wants to go volunteer to storm the Normandy because they want a Purple Heart later. Right. That's not their motivation.
Yeah, they're going to go potentially lay their lives down.
There's a high chance you're going to die or you're going to come home maimed, right? So if someone says, I want to go storm Normandy because I can't wait to come home and have a purple badge.
all the press I'm going to get. And
you think that person's crazy, right? Well, this is not as extreme, but if someone says, I want to be a leader because I want the flexibility, I want the props, I want the money, I'll say you're there for the wrong reason. You're going to be sorely disappointed.
Yeah. So, they haven't counted the cost.
Well, a kingdom leader, at least a kingdom leader. Yeah, absolutely.
I love this quote, and I think we can relate. The problem is people want to rent a vision. They don't want to buy it.
Yeah.
And that is so true. You know, when you could sign a lease, see how it works out, right? But the problem is, if you're going to be successful with that dream or that vision, you've got to own it, and that means the good days, the bad days.
Yeah, when a furnace breaks down,
Yeah.
guess what? You don't get to call the landlord. You got to go fix it yourself. When the pipes, sewage back up, that's on you. I've been an owner and a renter. I rent out property, so I understand that different. But that's a great example, because owning your vision means you have to come up with the practical steps. You have to get on an Excel spreadsheet. You have to say, hey, what is marketability? What is how much can I sell this for? I mean, those are the practical steps, the tactical steps you got to put in to accomplish any dream, any vision.
And back to the quote from Andy Andrews, which was so emphasizing, personal responsibility. I think the reason people should embrace responsibility and see it as such a positive thing is because every time I blame somebody else for what's not happening in my dream, I'm basically absolving myself from responsibility, which means I'm also resolving myself from any ability to respond, which means I become a victim. And there's nothing worse than having a big dream and you're completely paralyzed because that person didn't do this and I didn't get this.
Yep.
Yeah, what a sad thing to have this incredible vision and then realize you're just a blob. Life happens, you're a victim, you can't control it. It's everybody else's fault.
Yeah.
But when you own it, then there's a sense that I can respond properly, and when I respond properly, I get different outcomes, and when I get different outcomes, I can move forward. And it's liberating, really, but it is hard work. It's so much easier to just sit on the sidelines and watch life go by and watch other people become successful, and then you just blame everybody and be miserable all your life.
And the reason I know what you said is true is because I have been in both seats. I've been the seat of person who is disappointed that things don't go my way in my dream and sit there as a victim. And I also been the person who sees someone else do that, and now I'm a third person perspective.
Right.
And this is how I know what you just said is true, is because when I'm sitting in that seat and being a victim and feel like people let me down, blah, 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 I genuinely, authentically feel like I'm a victim. I feel like people did me wrong. I feel like I'm out of control. I feel like there's nothing I can do.
Yeah.
Now, when I sit in the other seat, when my emotions are not in it, I genuinely look at this person. Genuinely, if I'm Alice saying, you are being a victim right now, get up. You still got so much work to do. You still have so much potential.
Yep.
How could both of those things be true at the same time? They can't. It's your perspective. That's why in the middle of us losing hope, getting whatever, we need friends and outside perspective to come and say, hey, I know you feel that way because I've been that way before. But that's not all your friends around you. For the outside perspective, they know you're wrong. You are not a victim. You have so many resources around you. Get up off that seat and come see our perspective. Because you did it for me when I was a victim before, and I'm going to do it for you right now.
Well, that is so true.
That happens. I've seen that over and over again. So that now when I'm in that seat, I almost a little bit be able to see, okay, I know there's a guy looking at me right now. I'm not going to go talk to other people because I know they're going to come and chew me out. That's a level of self-awareness we need, right?
But that's genuine friendship.
Yes.
That's people that are willing to tell you the truth.
Yes, absolutely.
And that's the other thing. Sometimes people are like, well, I wish I had friends like that. Do you really?
Yeah, you don't invite people into that, right?
Because are you really willing for people to tell you the truth?
Yep.
Do you really want to be challenged? Do you really want people to say, hey, quit making excuses? I've heard this from you the last 3 times we've met. Sometimes we have people in the church that have been poured into for years. And again, we never give up on people. But the point is, how many encounter weekends, for instance, do you're an encounter junkie?
Right.
How many personal counseling sessions do you need? When are you going to change what you think, and when are you going to begin to apply the Word of God? When are you going to begin to get a dream for your life? And when are you going to? Okay, your past was hard. Yeah, you had this went wrong and that went wrong, and your parents got divorced, and life's full of all those things. But at some point, where does Jesus come in, and where the power of the gospel to change, and where do good friends to say, come on, let's move forward?
Right. You have all this big vision. I want to be this man of God, woman of God, blah, blah, blah. Okay, here's the tactical. Hey, get up in the morning and spend time with God before you get to work. Clear your mind. Get your mind straight. That's the tactical steps. Here's a tactical step. Don't look at pornography. Put a guard on your computer. Here's a tactical step, right?
Or get rid of your computer.
Get rid of your computer. Whatever it is.
Drastic steps to do whatever it takes to change.
But the tactical is the day-to-day grind that you have to accomplish. And sometimes people get lost in those things and they feel powerless because they can't accomplish this vision. I'm like, hey, let's focus on the basic steps.
So here's the formula. If you have passion without a plan, you're going to have pain. It's nothing's more painful than to have a big vision and not figure out how you're going to move there. You're going to be frustrated, and it's going to be a painful existence.
Yeah.
So first of all, I think takeaways from today: get with the Lord and ask the Holy Spirit to awaken the dream inside of you. You're not going to be able to dream and imagine a better future if you're still stuck in your past. So a lot of what we do here at Living Stones is to help people bring the past out to the light, deal with those painful areas, get your heart healed so that you can dream again. So, but when you're able to start dreaming again, that's just the first step, because then, as we said, we got to have a plan to get there, and you got to continue to work with your mind and what you believe so that your mind doesn't sabotage, and as we talked about last week, and run around. And if your dreams are like balloons and your mind's not changed, you keep popping the very balloons. One minute you're blowing up the balloon and inflating the balloon, and the next minute you're popping it because you haven't dealt with your thought processes. So this is really, really good. Have passion, get your heart awakened, develop a plan, and then begin to work that plan out. And don't do it by yourself. Surround yourself with some good people who will love you, tell you the truth, help keep you grounded. You know, some people are out flying in the sky with their dreams. Some people need to reach up, pull our legs, put us back on the ground, and help us see reality and help us see ourselves the way we need to see ourselves.
And the only thing I want to add to that is, I don't really know any dreams that can be accomplished by one person.
If it's a big dream, certainly.
I mean, unless your dream is like, I want to go on vacation, which is a great dream. Yeah, sure, just you go on vacation. But I'm talking about if you want to accomplish anything, there's literally, I have not seen one that can be done alone. In fact, God has always called us to collaborate with other people.
Yeah.
Because there are parts of the dream you just cannot do. And He designed you to find the other person who's been given that other portion of the dream to come together. And this is the place where requires tremendous humility.
Yeah.
God almost ingrained in us that we need to be humble to accomplish our dream, because you just can't do it yourself.
Yeah.
You need other parts. You might be great at strategy, but you're terrible at tactics. So you need someone who comes along and say, hey, I'm going to break down your big vision to
How many
small
times
steps.
have you seen this with entrepreneurs? There are some are great with their hands. They're great doing the actual work, but they're really bad at all the details, the administrative parts of it.
Yeah.
Or some people, again, they're hands-on, or maybe they're great salespeople, and man, they can create all kinds of business, but then they don't have the team around them to actually execute whatever it is that their product or their service is.
Right.
It's all this is about team. It's all about different giftings. It's all about how God's wired us, and I think the Lord has designed it so that we have to be interdependent. We have to collaborate. We have to work together.
We have to. And that's one of the secrets I learned, because the whole self-isolation thing, man, it just doesn't work. And when you feel like you have to do everything on your own, there's a degree of insecurity and there's identity issues involved.
Blindness.
Blind spots that you don't have, and it just doesn't work. So invite others, but you got to find the right people too. So, I mean, that's a whole thing. But my point is, hey, invite other people who have strength that you don't have to help you collaborate in your dreams.
That's good.
That's
so
huge.
practical. Being practical again. We got a men's encounter coming up, a women's encounter coming up. This Saturday morning we have a women's event with over 200 women. If you're trying to build relationships, this is a great way to build relationships. We have life groups meeting right now all over the region. These are small gatherings where you can be seen and known and loved and encouraged. I mean, everything about our ministry, we have a market share gathering for those that are working in the marketplace.
It's great networking, people to get to know people with like-minded, and people got to build a lot of collaboration through that. Seeing a lot of the great fruit was people collaborating together. I'm like, awesome! I didn't even know about that. That's great.
Every Sunday morning, 3 services to come, and it's amazing how between the worship and the word and fellowship, it's a great cure for stinking thinking and being depressed and feeling like you got no hope. So we encourage you, work on your dream. Let other people help speak into your life and help clarify your dream and help support you in your journey. Amen. So anyway, most of all, spend some time with God this week. He loves you. He created you on purpose. He has a dream that he wants to see accomplished through your life, and you've been uniquely designed by him for that purpose. So spend time with the Lord, and we also love to hear your feedback. We love to hear your dreams and be a part of your journey. So give us some feedback on this podcast if it's helpful. And as always, like it and share it. Spread the news far and wide so that we can help get the word out about the podcast if it's helpful to you. I know it'll be helpful to other people. Thank you so much for tuning in. We'll look forward to seeing you next Thursday.